welcome to Collegedunia. And today we have here with us Dr. Himanshu Rai, who's the director at IIM Indore. And sir will be talking to us about online education. And we'd like to know your thoughts on the same.
Certainly,
We welcome you.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So sir, starting off, I'd like to ask that how did the institute prepare for such a sudden shift that occurred due to the pandemic into a virtual mode? So practically overnight, I think, I guess it's safe to say that, the entire mode of education had to shift online, and the entire curriculum had to adapt to that. So how did the institute prepare itself for that?
So, Rishika, in that particular blessed evening of the third week of March in 2020 is etched in my mind and my heart. There was a lot of pressure coming from the parents who were worried about the safety of the students, and therefore we called an academic council meeting and decided that we'll ask the students to go back and shift to an online mode. Now, shifting to the online mode, in fact, we were the first IIM to do so. And shifting to the online mode was not really difficult because we had been offering executive programs in the online mode for a fairly long time, and therefore we had the wherewithal. But there were some things which we learned along the way, which is what I would want to share with everyone who's a part of Collegedunia. And that was that while we shifted within a week, so within a week we were able to take the classes from the classroom to the online mode, we realized that there were some issues which we had not foreseen. For example, at our end, it was very easy because we had the resources, we had the faculty, we had a critical mass of faculty who actually had experience in teaching online. But what we did not account for was the fact that many of our students were not prepared to be shifted to the online mode for the simple reason that some of them came from far-flung areas where bandwidth was an issue. Some of them did not have the required equipment in their house. Some of them did not have the required time and space, because let's not forget, even the other members of the family had started working from home. And therefore, not everyone is blessed to have a big enough home to have their separate places and a time of the day where they can all work simultaneously while not disturbing each other. And therefore, we tried to adapt things. The first thing that we did, so I'll talk about it from two perspectives. One is the academic perspective, the other is the administrative perspective. So from the academic perspective, what we did was we quickly started training the rest of our faculty as to what online mode is, because one of the big mistakes that a lot of people make, and I'm not talking just about IIMs, but I'm talking about institutions across the world, was that they believed that online teaching is exactly the same as classroom teaching. The only thing is you're doing it in front of the camera. No, not at all. It's a completely different pedagogical tool. And therefore we train our faculty, and our training was so amazing that subsequently IIM Indore was able to help other institutions to actually get online. So we started a faculty development program, which was an online program on how to teach online. And it became a major success because we had the wherewithal. So that was the one thing that we did from our end. We got the sophisticated equipment in terms of tracking cameras, in terms of very, very sensitive audio systems. Some of them were hanging mics where the person did not even need to have something in front of him or her, but those mics would catch everything. And subsequently, we realized, and when we realized that on the student front, there were issues, we built up a learning management system. And we made sure that the classes were available. The classes were being recorded and they were available to students for a finite period of time once the classes were over, so that if somebody had missed the class, they had the opportunity to look at the class again. And the other big thing that we did was we restructured the courses themselves to make them suitable for online. Just to give you an example, in a typical IIM Indore class, you would have a course. A 24-session course would possibly have about 15 odd case studies. Now, clearly, that was not very doable so far as the online mode was concerned. So therefore, we tweaked around, we looked at what would be the most appropriate method in terms of the course content so that the course can be delivered effectively. And likewise, the assessment methods. We created online assessment methods. We also rejigged the assessment criteria within each of the courses and therefore within the programs. So this is what we did from an academic perspective, and we made the students very, very comfortable with everything, with all the platforms. So there was a training session for students as well, so that they can learn. There were those FAQs which were put up, and there was a helpline where the students can immediately call up somebody or write to somebody, particularly where the assessments were concerned. The second part was the administrative issues. And this was interesting because I don't know if you've been to our campus or not, but we have a beautiful 193-acre campus built on a hill. It's beautiful because it's on a hill. And because it's on a hill, the maintenance of the campus becomes that much more difficult. And we had only 10% of the support staff which was inside. And even though we did not have students, we had about 80 to 100 students for whom this was home, because they did not have at that point of time any place to go to. But we had 150 families staying in the campus. And therefore the campus needed to be maintained just like before. And the second element was that we really did not know anything about the pandemic. I still remember I was under the blessed impression that, hey, it's going to be probably 2 or 3 months and then everything is going to be hunky-dory, we're going to be back to normal. And therefore we had to keep the campus ready, waiting to welcome all our students, because it's the students who bring life to the campus. And thus maintaining the campus with 10% of the support staff, that was a big challenge. And I think once again, IIM Indore did something which I'm extremely proud of. We called upon the community of IIM Indore to come and volunteer. So we divided the work into 5 different categories. One was gardening, the other was security, the third was looking after the mess, the fourth was looking after the dog shelter, and the fifth was housekeeping, which was jharu pocha. And much to my delight, our entire community came together. The faculty, the staff, the officers, their spouses, even their children. The children also came and helped us in gardening, etc. And therefore, we were able to maintain throughout the lockdown period the campus as it was before the lockdown. So I think a slew of measures. And then we had SOPs which were being drawn, looked at, and reviewed every 15 to 20 days. And likewise, I was in constant touch with all the students, writing to them every 15 to 20 days, to all the students who were in the campus and to all the students who were outside the campus. And even to those who were outside the campus, I kept on telling them what was happening inside the campus, so that they felt that connect, that they knew what we were doing and the little initiatives that we were taking or the little problems that we were facing. I would apprise them of all. And I think through this connect and with some amazing teamwork that all my faculty colleagues, officers, staffs, and as I said, even their families showed, we were able to make this transition very, very smoothly.
So I think that's commendable. And I think that sounds very interesting as well. Must have been a sight.
It was.
So following up on the challenges that you said, how would you say that, online education compensates for peer-to-peer learning that we get in say a physical environment with the infrastructure? Because out in the industry, I think that becomes very important, right? The peer-to-peer interaction adds a lot of value. So how exactly does it compensate?
It doesn't compensate. And let me be very, very clear, it cannot compensate. So there is absolutely no substitute so far as campus learning is concerned. And therefore, right from the beginning, I was waiting for the opportunity and I was hoping that circumstances would become conducive for us to bring students back to the campus. Because you're right, it's not just about peer-to-peer learning, Rishika, because what we did was we gave them group assignments, we made sure that they were interacting with each other, and therefore at least some part of the peer-to-peer learning was actually taking place. When you live in the campus, you are living a life which is independent. You're not living at your home, which is a protected life. So the fact that you're making decisions on your own, number one, you are living in a campus where you're living a completely different life, which is according to you. You're building on your dreams, number two. And number three, you can constantly be in touch with whoever you wish to. So for example, if I get an idea and I want to discuss it with a friend of mine or with a batchmate of mine, I could do so in the campus. Now, when we are living in different silos, we're living in our own homes, one thinks twice, because I think we have now reached that level of social interaction where you first message, can I call? And when the person says, okay, you can call, then you call and then you say, hey, can I visit? Very different from the times I still recall when you would just land up in your friend's home. There was no need to call before, there was no need to text before. But things are very different. And therefore, what you learn while you're in the campus is an entire wholesome experience of life. That cannot be replicated, that cannot be compensated for. What we did, however, was that we made sure that we brought them to the campus. So I'm very delighted to share with you that all our students did come to the campus at some point of time. So while some students could spend only one term, there were some students who spent 2 terms with us. So that was almost 2/3 of the time. And then we had our 1-year executive programs where some students actually spend their entire time in the campus. So, by creating a bio bubble where I made some very strict rules within the campus so that, there was absolutely no touch with the world outside. And even when the staff, etc., who lived outside the campus were coming to the campus, I got them to come in the alternate mode. So when the staff from the outside would come inside the campus, then the staff inside would not go. And then we would have a proper disinfection of we disinfected the offices, etc., and then made sure that the next day, the following day, it was the staff inside who took charge. And therefore, by and large, we managed to keep our campus very safe. And therefore, I was able to bring the students inside. And for those who we could not bring inside, as I said, we had some group assignments, we had certain live projects where they were supposed to interact with each other. And then, of course, there were industry lectures. So they were updated on what the industry did. So IIM Indore, for example, in association with Free Press Journal, actually brought in some 12 industry captains, the CEOs of different industrial verticals, who spoke about how had the pandemic affected the industry and how would India look like post the pandemic. Of course, we haven't reached that. At that point of time, we thought that the pandemic would be over perhaps in a year or so. And therefore, all of these lectures, all of these seminars that we did were extremely useful in keeping the students relevant, keeping the students updated to the relevant knowledge that they needed in the post-pandemic world.
Okay, sir. I hope students can visit this year, hopefully with the vaccines out.
But they will. So I have already told the students that every student who gets a dose of vaccine can actually come to the campus.
That's great, sir.
Absolutely.
So while we were, previously you were mentioning the executive programs that you have, the online executive programs. So I wanted to know, while you were strategizing a shift to virtual for your normal courses, was there any change in that front? Do you think the capabilities or the infrastructure that you had because of that helped in any way? Or how did that, how did that shift pan out? And what does it mean for the online executive MBA?
So online executive education has become an extremely important linchpin in our entire strategic process, because you need to understand, Rishika, that imagine a situation where we have an X percentage of our revenue coming from MDPs, which used to be physical MDPs, the management development programs and other executive education programs, and suddenly they become zero. We are not talking about reduction by 10%, 20%, 30%, but from 100%, they become zero because you just couldn't get the executives inside, particularly those short-term duration programs. And therefore, we had to look at it not merely from looking at expanding the executive education program, but this was a question of survival of our executive program portfolio itself. And therefore, once again, very quickly, what we did was we built on whatever infrastructure that we had in terms of our executive education program. We built on the infrastructure that we have for our online education program, the other OLPs, and then we very quickly expanded it. So I think in a record time of about 2 or 3 months, we created 4 studios, 4 audiovisual studios with the state-of-the-art technology within our campus. And we increased the number as well as the revenues of our executive education program by more than 100% within a year. And we continue to keep adding to the portfolio of our executive education program. And all of these years of experience that we have had came in handy. And also the fact that we prepared the other faculty members by conducting training programs for them as to how to teach online for our regular flagship academic programs also helped us in expanding our portfolio of the executive education programs.
Right, sir. So while we're at it, I think another thing that concerns the students a lot is, in a virtual setting, what kind of internships or jobs initially, at least, can they expect? I mean, what are the roles going to be like, and how is it going to pan out?
No, see, the jobs are not going to change. The internships are not going to change. The nature of the internship has changed. So instead of doing a field work, now they are doing a work from home kind of a virtual internship where they're trying to build more on the secondary data rather than primary data. And also they can collect primary data over the phone or over the mail. So it's not the same because you obviously miss out on the observational part. You can't observe people doing certain things, and that is a very, very useful input when you actually go. So for example, making a new connection online, particularly if you're doing a cold call kind of thing, is very, very difficult as compared to an offline thing. And therefore, what will not change is the kind of jobs. What will change is the skill sets that would be required. And Rishika, by the way, whether this pandemic had happened or not, we were inexorably moving towards a post-fourth industrial revolution world, where some of the skills which we have today were going to become redundant, and there was a set of skills which was going to become relevant. So for example, just before the pandemic, in the second week of February, I was in Milan, where we were having a conference of the deans from all over the world. By the way, this was just a month before the pandemic. The pandemic was raging around us. Only thing is we didn't know. But there were these 200, 300 of us, and that too in Milan, in the Lombardy region, which became the epicenter just a few days after that. And we were trying to brainstorm on what are the kind of skill sets which would be required in the post-fourth industrial revolution world. And look at those. We said that we would require to have the skill set of complex decision making. We need to do sense making through big data analytics. We need to look at skills which are relevant to artificial intelligence, machine learning, and blockchain, and therefore improving everything by the use of these technologies. We need to have skills of negotiation. We need to have skills of coordination, including virtual coordination. So if you look at these 5 skills, so we came up with 10, but I don't want to make this a professorial lecture, this particular interview. But if you look at these 5, these would have been required nonetheless. The only thing the pandemic has done is it has hastened and accelerated the process. And therefore, the internships and the kind of the job offers that will come are going to be exactly for the same position, but the way you would actually carry out those jobs is going to be different. The content of the job, the profile of the job is going to be different. So you will need to do the higher level decision making rather than the number crunching, which is likely to be taken over by machines in the near future.
Right, sir. It's actually great to know how, a premier institution in a premier B school in India has so much to offer to students, even in such a state. Sir, I think we're moving to the end of this interview, and, I'd just like to know if you had any suggestions for aspiring students. What would be your advice at this point of time? What is it that they should do you mentioned the skill sets, but what should their approach be towards getting into colleges, say, or towards their academics to become successful in life?
Rishika, I'll divide this into 2 parts. And although you did not ask me one of the parts, I'm nonetheless going to use this opportunity to answer it. So I'm not going to talk only to the aspiring students through your medium, but I'm also going to talk to the current students. So even to the current students, and I'm not talking about students at IIM Indore, I'm talking about students across higher education and across the world. What all of you must remember is that because of education shifting from the classroom mode to the online mode, a big chunk of the onus of learning has now landed on your shoulders, which means you will have to take charge. So I know that many of my colleagues keep telling me that when we take online classes, students do not switch on their videos. While you may have a very good reason of not switching on your videos, what you must understand is that when you actually see live people, when you actually see live faces, it brings you that much bit closer to an actual class kind of an experience. And the closer that you are to the class kind of an experience, the better it is for your own learning. And also remember, a lot of students get into this phase where they talk about, should we have exams, should we not have exams, should we have this kind of exam, should we have that kind of exams. Ultimately, it is the learning which matters. When we talk about assessment, that assessment is not merely to grade students. That assessment is also tell to the rest of the world, saying that, look, the students that we have been assessed, we are certified, we are taking the guarantee that these students know whatever this degree says they are expected to know. And therefore, I think a greater responsibility will need to be taken by all of you students to make sure that you're learning, the academic rigor does not get hampered. I know things are inconvenient, I know things are too bad, particularly the second wave of pandemic has been extremely grim for all of us. But I think this is the time when we have to draw from our inner resources and make sure that we face this with a lot of courage, and we do not let that ethic of learning down, because ultimately we are responsible not just for ourselves, but also for this world. We have to shape the kind of a post-pandemic world that we are going to step into. And to shape that, we need to make sure that we are armed with all the learning. So this is my message to the current students, and now to all the aspiring students. And this is just an extension of what I said to the current students. All the time, at least us in the business schools have taught you that organizations need to have a vision, and likewise all of you need to have a vision. Let me add a little bit onto it. Not only do you need to have a vision for yourself, not only do you need to have a vision for the organization that you wish to be a part of, or the collective that you're a part of. You don't need to be a part of an organization. I'm sure that you're already a part of a collective. You're a part of your family, you're a part of perhaps a group, you're a part of some extended group of friends, or some hobby circle, etc., etc. Whatever collective that you're responsible for, make sure that along with a vision, you also now bring in imagination. And what do I mean by imagination? Imagine the kind of a universe that you would want to be a part of. Why? Because the universe that we are a part of today is clearly not the ideal universe. We have messed around a lot with the universe. And this pandemic, along with the other things, I'm not saying that cyclones never happened in the past. I'm not saying that earthquakes never happened in the past, but look at the frequency. Look at the frequency of the earthquakes. Look at the frequency of these turmoils of nature. This is nature giving us a message that we have messed up enough. And therefore, not only do we need to stop, but we need to undo a lot of things. And therefore, what I would suggest to all the aspiring students is that imagine a future. Imagine the universe that you would want to be a part of, and then see how can you contribute towards the world reaching that particular universe and towards you reaching that universe. So choose your courses, choose your programs, choose your field of work, choose your field of education accordingly. And not simply because others seem to be doing that. So simply because others seem to be joining engineering or medicine or management at some point of time does not mean that you ought to be doing so. You need to figure out what is the universe that you wish to create for yourself, and then you need to figure out what will take you closer to that universe or what will help you in building that universe. So that is the first thing. And the second thing I would tell to all your aspiring students, and this is extremely important because many a times we have started equating our success or failure in a particular exam, be it an entrance exam or be it subsequently an exam, to our success or failure in life. Not at all. Not at all. Everyone will tell you that it is hard work in life which matters. Yes, hard work matters, but along with hard work, what you need is perseverance. You need that grit, you need that resilience, which means that even if you fail, you need to have that resilience or the grit to get up again and attempt again, because please remember, failing in an exam or failing in any initiative that you have taken once or twice does not make you a failure. You become a failure only the day you stop trying. So make sure that you have that big picture of vision and imagination in your head. Make sure that while you're working hard, you're also building in those resources inside of you that will help you in getting up should you not succeed the first time. Because remember, it's merely a question of trying again and trying along with the learning that you would have learned from your first time when you did not succeed, and you're surely going to go and get those dreams. And times could not be better than today, by the way. In a very different way, the kind of technological advancements that we are making, the kind of opportunities which are possible and out there for people to experiment with what they wish to do. These times are also unprecedented. And therefore, this is the time when you should experiment. This is the time when you should try to make your dreams a reality. And with that imagination and with the perseverance, no dream is far enough.
Thank you, sir. I think this becomes really important for students who are, just going to get into the admission cycle this year, and I'm sure they have a lot to take away from this interview. Thank you so much for being here, sir. Those are very wise words, and it was great talking to you about this. It was great knowing more about your institution, and I hope students will get to know more about the institution and the kind of things that you're doing from this interview, and will benefit them.
My pleasure, Rishika.
Thank you so much.